Gela Kasla, greetings. Welcome to Seasons of the Sasquatch. This is the new venture that I'm doing with my good friend Ali Stephen from Nanaimo. Ali is a 60-year-old gentleman who's retired from his work, and he's come out with me before as a paying client when I first met him. And then him and I kindled a friendship, and we started to go investigating together. We went down to my cabins just north of Campbell River in Sayward on Vancouver Island at the edge of Johnson Straits on the east side of Vancouver Island. And I used to use it for sea kayaking back in the early 2000s, but recently I've been calling it the Sasquatch Research Camp because when we go down there we hear things. We've seen them down there before. In actual fact, in 2006 we got chased out of there by a couple of big ones that got pretty vocal and pretty aggressive, and we had to leave that late afternoon and take off on a boat, and we went back the next day and we found evidence that they definitely were there, tracks and so forth, nothing really defined. But we started going down there, I guess, about 4 years ago, and we'd hear things and we'd seen tracks. I brought down a gentleman from a television network, and he was doing a documentary series or show called Bigfoot Girl. So I brought them down there, and lo and behold, we found some tracks, and we actually got some good plaster casts, 2 of them out of there. So there's a lot of activity, and the main reason is because it's the narrowest part of Vancouver Island without a lot of tide or waves from the westerly winds that blow down Johnson Straits, and then the ebb tide hits it and you get big standing waves, which start about 5 miles south of us at the really narrow spot of Johnson Straits, Vancouver Island. But where we are, it's relatively close to the mainland shore right across from us. And when you're at the camp, and I'll show you some pictures or you'll see it in video when we get up there, right across from camp is a mountain range on the mainland, and there's a valley that goes through, and that valley, I've walked it, and it goes through to a place called Boogie Bay. Boogie Bay is a hot spot of Sasquatch activity because in the mid 1990s some loggers were putting a road through and falling trees to get ready to log it, and they contacted me, and I went in there and found tracks, seen evidence of a couple 45-gallon drums of oil that were thrown way down a bank, and took 5 of us a good half an hour to get 1 drum back up to the road. And the reports I got from some of the workers, they were pretty scared of the vocalizations they were hearing. One actually seen a big Sasquatch there, and it was shaking a tree at the edge of the forest while he was sitting in a machine. And the native history, oral history from us Kwakwaka'wakw clam diggers and people going out crabbing or anchor out in Boogie Bay, they tell of the vocalizations at night, seeing tracks. There's a good story about a non-native guy. His name was Clam Digger Dan, and I remember asking him one time, because he lived out in the Broughton Archipelago, I asked him while we were drinking beer what he thought of the Sasquatch, the Bigfoot. And he just shook his head. There's no such thing. They're make-believe. It's in your mind. There's no Sasquatches out there. And then that night, after we had a few more beers, he was telling me about how he went into Boogie Bay alone at nighttime on a low tide, beached his boat, went onto the sand flats and started raking for manila clams. But he said he was finding cockles as well. And he had one of those Coleman lanterns, and it was on a metal bar hanging above him. And he squatted down, working in the sands, digging away and raking. And he said all of a sudden he smelled something, and he looked up, and there was the longest-legged black bear that was huge that walked by him inside the light that was being cast by the lantern. And I said, what happened? He says, I just put my head down. I didn't have a gun. I was afraid of that big black bear. But it just kept walking and disappeared into the darkness. And I said, what time of the year was that? He said, it was around December, January. And I said, yeah, black bears are sleeping that time of the year, Dan. I think that was a Sasquatch. And he was, no way. There's no way it was a Sasquatch. That was a big black bear. And, it gave some more, I guess you could say, credence to Boogie Bay being a hot spot for Sasquatches. Being a clam digger and living out in that area for over 26 years, I used to go to Boogie Bay because it was really good to throw your crab trap down baited. And then at low tide, I used to do it at daylight, mind you, but on a low tide and day, I would go ashore and I'd rake away, and maybe an hour to 2 hours, I'd end up with those milk crates. I'd end up with 4 or 5 of those filled with cockles. And as we know, this is a cockle right here. It's a type of clam, a bivalve. And it's the favorite food of this little fella, the bukwus, as well as junakwa, the Sasquatch. And of course, it's a delicacy to the locals and to the native people. And Boogie Bay is filled with it. So there you go right there. It shows high concentration of protein. And this is what Ali and I are going to be documenting with Seasons of the Sasquatch. We're going to go out here in the next few weeks because he just bought a GoPro today. It's the end of May 2020. And he's bought it with extra batteries and data chips, tripods, waterproof cases, all the attachments that come with the GoPro 8. And I think he's even going to get one of those gyro stabilizers. But we're going to go forth and we're going to go to the seasonal protein accumulations that are good to harvest or available during certain times of the year. So being the end of May, we have fiddlehead ferns and sword ferns, which just last year I found out Sasquatches here in Washington State like sword ferns. I never knew that. I was out in Granite Falls area and we had some activity that night while we were in tents. And the next day with tracks and handprints and the moss on the rock, we were tracking where the Sasquatch or two had come around our camp, sort of being curious, I guess. But along the side of the road where all these sword ferns were about that high, they were all snapped, probably well over 200. So it definitely showed me with the tracks, indentations in the grass amongst those sword ferns, that the Sasquatch was walking along checking us out, but at the same turn harvesting away and filling its belly with sword ferns. So end of May is that time, that season. So we'll be documenting the ferns that they harvest. Into June, we're going to be getting the salmon berries ripening up pretty soon, and then the huckleberries, thimbleberries, and eventually we'll get the blackberries coming in line during the summer. But during the summer season, of course, you know, up in the alpines, that's where the ungulates, the hoofed animals, are going to be doing fawn drop and raising their young, and all the green growth in the alpines above tree line. They're going to be getting a lot of milk production. And of course your cougars, bears, wolves, Sasquatch, they go up there during the summer to harvest the ungulates, you know, whatever they can get, I guess. But Ali and I are planning to go up into the alpines on Vancouver Island, and we're going to park the four-wheel drive and walk into the alpines and hopefully stay there for 3 days and 2 nights. And we'll be bringing the Fleur Scout that we have on loan from Andre in Minnesota, and we have this other Fleur right here that is Fleur 2, I believe it is, but it attaches to your Android or your iPhone. You just plug it into the charging port and you got color video, audio recording, video recording, stills, different features. And I highly recommend using Fleur. I can't speak for the other companies because I haven't used them yet, but the inexpensive, you know, under $500 Fleur units that I have, I highly recommend them. I've been in Omaha on the Omaha Indian Reserve, and we recorded a couple instances where we had bipedal Fleur images. They're blob squatches, they're blurry, I've shared them, you know, but you know, we've recorded something. Definitely wasn't four-legged. So we'll be doing that during the summer, going into the alpines. And of course in late August, the salmon will be showing up into the rivers on Vancouver Island. And we're going to be there documenting at night the salmon spawn and animals that are harvesting them with the Fleurs. And hopefully we'll get some trail cameras up, and you know, it's all about trying to be on that quest to get a nice video or still image of a Sasquatch that isn't blurry. And that's what it's all about. But during this journey of Seasons of the Sasquatch, I'll be going every month with Ali and recording a high concentration protein that's in season. Be at low tide where we can harvest the shellfish during the fall and the winter and early spring. Year round when we can go on the beaches at low tide and harvest things called chitons. They look like footballs, and they're a type of sea creature that's, they grow about that big sometimes at low water. You can find them and pry them off. A lot of protein there. And then you have the limpets, which are known as a China hat. They look like a Chinese woven hat, and it's shell, and underneath, like an abalone, there's the meat. And we documented in the bay, and I believe it was February 2 years ago, on Fleur, that image we have with Adam Davies and a few others that were on a yacht. With Fleur like that, we recorded color imagery of a bipedal creature at half tide rising. So the shellfish beds were covered by water. What was that thing harvesting? Well, the next day we went ashore, and lo and behold, I noticed on the rocks areas that were just cleared of the chitons that were about that round. So it was out there harvesting those. So it's another protein that they harvest at low tide. And of course, you can go on some places that have sand and eelgrass. The eelgrass is edible. I'll be showing you that. But also you can go with a rake or your hand. And I posted it on my Sasquatch Island Facebook group last month in April, how me and my son in Nanaimo on Vancouver Island went out. And in 1 hour, we harvested over 80 Dungeness crabs. Of course, there's a legal size restriction, and we ended up keeping 10 of them that were that big out of 80. So it shows just how much protein is on those beaches, and it's something that hasn't really been documented yet by anyone that goes out and does shows on Sasquatch or Bigfoot, or even people that write books, like my new good friend Robert Alley, who wrote Rainforest Sasquatch, and then he showed up yesterday and gave me this one, Bigfoot in Southeast Alaska, and he autographed both of them for me. And here in my little garage studio, we spoke for a couple hours, and he's a man that's just filled with information about encounters. But reading his book, Rainforest Sasquatch, I notice he touches on low tide harvesting by Sasquatch, but he doesn't go in depth. And that's what Allie and I will be doing with Seasons of the Sasquatch. We're going to be documenting by video. I'm going to be telling you everything, how to harvest, how to prepare and clean the seafoods we find, and how to cook it. And at the end of a few episodes, you're going to gain knowledge that the First Nations people have in the Pacific Northwest for thousands of years. And that is, when the tide is low, the buffet table is set, as we say. And most people don't realize just how much good seafood is down there. You know, they overlook the chitons, the limpets. You can't harvest abalone nowadays, but if you look in certain places, you'll find moon snails, sea cucumbers, and even, as some reports speak about at big low tides, Sasquatches in the boulder fields exposed, looking underneath and then ripping out big octopus, some of them up to 100 pounds, the Pacific octopus. Who knew you could go to a beach at low tide, and with a little bottle filled with usually a little bit of bleach and water, you squirt it in a hole, and with a gaff hook you grab that octopus when he lets go of the rocks inside because of the bleach water, and you yard him out, and there's your halibut bait, or you can wash it off and skin it, clean it, and eat the octopus. But as some native art depictions show, Jonaqua, this big woman here, down at beaches, ancestors had seen them harvesting octopus. So that's what it's all about, Seasons of the Sasquatch. It's all about opening the door and making you people, the viewers, be able to understand a major component about the Sasquatch, and that is what they eat and where they eat and what times of the year. And I'll be reaching out to you, the viewer. Definitely get a hold of me. We're going to be posting this on the internet. We'll be starting our free subscription channel on YouTube called Seasons of the Sasquatch. You will have an email on there to contact me, and in the comments from time to time, phone numbers of where I'm at, whether it be US with that cell or Canada with my cell up there. But invite us. Bring us to your regions. I've been to Northwest Territories, Iowa, Ohio. I've been to Nebraska, California, Oregon, Washington State, Idaho, British Columbia, Alberta, Yukon, Alaska. So invite us, and we'll gladly come out with our cameras and our videos, and we'll record and bring you into the episode of Seasons of the Sasquatch on something that is found to be known to be harvested by Sasquatch in your region. So once again, remember Sasquatch Island. That's my main Facebook group. That's my television production that Ali's a part of too, with the documentaries that we're producing called Sasquatch Island, The Other Tribe, with Wild Woman Media. And of course, Ali and I doing seasons of the Sasquatch. It was just something to do, get some B-roll and get out in the field investigating and sharing with you the knowledge that I have, having lived in the bush for over 25 years and being a commercial fisherman all my life. I'm now going to be leaving Washington State at the end of June, going back to Vancouver Island, where I'll be going out commercial salmon fishing. And this little knockoff GoPro I have, it's going to be going with me, and I'm going to be doing seasons of the Sasquatch in other places throughout central British Columbia. And if the fish show up in the north, just south of Alaska, outside Prince Rupert, I'll be up there too. And I'll be doing interviews with people about their Sasquatch encounters and their beliefs. Hopefully we'll get to go with some of the other native tribes and record their traditional regalia of masks and regalia outfits, because up in the Prince Rupert area in northern British Columbia, when you go up into the Nisga'a tribes territory inland, I was there in 2007 and I went to the Hubaye. It's a big celebration in March, but my kids sat bolt upright in the bleachers we were sitting, and they both pointed to the back doors as this big creature was coming out in regalia, and they both screamed, "Junah!" What it was their interpretation from the Nisga'a. I can't remember what they called it. I believe it was books. I'm not too sure. But anyway, that dancer in that regalia actually had to bend down in an 8-foot door because he was on stilts, and he come walking out striding with that big regalia with that mask and the outfit. You can see it in one of the posts on Sasquatch Island, my Facebook group, and you can see a video of it as well being performed. Hopefully I'll get to meet them and get them to perform for one of our shows or all of them. But that's what it's all about, Seasons of the Sasquatch. It's about getting out there. And for all of you that are doing it, get out there with your cameras and your video. That's the only way we're going to get some good crispy images. We just have to keep trying. For you people that are gifting, please don't use modern foods. As I always say, try to use traditional foods or foods that we can get 12 months of the year that they can't, like squash and pears and apples and plums. I know it's summer coming up. That'll all be in the natural state out in the backyards of people's houses and farms and abandoned homesteads and Indian villages. But we already know that. That's what Sasquatch harvests, our foods that we grow outside. And that'll possibly be an episode of seasonal harvest in our show. But when you're out there, be respectful of the Sasquatch. Don't ever try to harm them. Don't ever try to kill them. That is so wrong. Just try to get close to them if they allow it. And be respectful of them. If they bang trees or they snap trees or they throw things at you or they're growling at you, it's them telling you, stop, turn around, go back where you came from. I don't want you here. Don't push it. Respect them. Do exactly that. And if we keep up the respect like that, maybe we will get that Diane Fossey, Jane Goodall interaction like they did with the great apes and the chimpanzees. Maybe we'll get that interaction with the Sasquatch. We've heard the stories of that supposedly taking place, but then again, when we hear it in these modern times, don't BS. Everyone's got a good cell phone with a darn good camera. So get the video, get the pictures if you want us to believe you. And, it's just my personal opinion, because there's far too many BSers out there on the internet, trying to seek attention and grandeur and spotlight time. But they have no backup. They have no pictures, and this is what it's all about. We have to respect one another. And by respecting one another, it's not trying to pull the wool over our other fellow humans' faces in regards to the Sasquatch, Bigfoot. Because a lot of people like me, we know they exist, and we're just trying to document their true existence. So, hopefully we can start looking at protecting them more, less clear cutting, things like that. I'm not an environmentalist, but we do have to have that balance within our ecosystems. That's all I'm advocating. I use toilet paper, and that comes from logging. I like to go in vehicles, and that comes from drilling for oil and natural gas. I like electricity and heat. So, it's all about the balance, harmony in nature. And I think that's when we look really deep into Sasquatches and how they act around us. I think that's what we have to be very considerate of, that they don't like what we're doing. And that's one reason why they're possibly staying away from us. But we'll get more into it when we get out in the field with the cameras. I thank you very much for watching this video. Don't forget to chatter, chatter, chatter like a Sasquatch. That means hit the share button, talk to people, send emails out, send private messages, repost. And, I don't mind you sharing anything I post, because that's what it's all about. Everyone communicating back and forth. And like I always say at the end of my videos and podcasts, be very safe out there. And I thank you very much for listening. And the language of my people, halakilisla. Go in peace.